Take it easy.
All right, everybody, welcome into the Easy Approach. As always, I am Nate. And as always, I am joined by Tony Zuma.
Hello, hello. Thank you everyone for joining us today. We're having a much needed conversation based off of the last few episodes. If you have been following us on that journey, talking a little bit about the end times, right, Nate?
The end times. Yep, it's a conversation that has been a big one lately. I mean, not just lately. It's just a big one period, but especially lately because we had some pretty hard and fast predictions about when the end of the world was going to happen and
Yeah,
when
that was a fun time.
Yeah, I don't know if you've been keeping up with it, but I was following the major voices that were predicting like this is the day, and have a lot of people following them. And this one particular guy, I won't give names, but you can just Google like who are the big voices who were predicting September 23rd. This particular guy is just doubling down. And he's saying, well, God revealed to me that what we think as September 23rd is not actually September 23rd. And he was doing like Gregorian calendar and pointing at different things. And I believe he said it's actually October the 7th or something.
Oh my gosh.
But it's a time that is in the physical past. Like it from this moment of the day we're recording, that date has already passed.
We've survived that one as well, people.
Yes, right. Yep. So I don't know. I haven't kept up with like the most recent updates of like where do we go from here if it's not this date. But yeah, it's definitely been a conversation on the table. So today, by the way, if you can't tell by just two voices, just me and Tony today. Kanan wasn't able to join us to finish out the conversation, but I mean, it is the easy approach. Although Kanan's last name is Evans too, so I guess that doesn't really work. Yeah, that first episode, we talked about apocalyptic literature. Tony, do you remember, does anything stick out when you think of that first conversation we had?
Yeah, it's probably telling the difference in my mind between the first conversation and the second conversation where it's going to be difficulties.
First conversation, just as a reminder, we got into like the book of Daniel and the book of Revelation and all of the symbolism.
Yeah, those stick out to me big time, for sure.
Yes, and basically, like, how do you even begin to approach these books? Like, what are they trying to do? What purpose are they trying to serve?
Yeah, because I was talking about like how for the longest time there's been a big part of me that just avoided end time conversations or end time studies or the book of Revelation. It's like, yeah, of course it's part of the Bible, but just like any good Christian, I like to cherry pick what I want to study, right? But understanding that no, there's an actual historical context to Revelation, just like all the other historical contexts that we love to identify and look at. And comparing that to the historical context in the Old Testament as well, I think that was a very fascinating episode. So if you haven't had the chance to hear that episode, I definitely encourage you to go back to that one when you're able, for sure.
Yes, and just as a little note, like a little disclaimer, obviously you will be able to get a lot more from this conversation if you've listened to the first two parts of kind of this mini series, but these are also meant to stand alone. So you could hop in here and pick up from the conversation, which, by the way, is going to revolve around the rapture, in case the title of the episode didn't clue you in. But you will get a lot more, I think, if you listen to that first episode where we talked about like what is the role of apocalyptic literature, and then that second episode where we kind of traced the theme of like where all of history is heading. Are we looking at just like the world is going to end, we're going to get zapped up to the good place, and that is like, that's our destiny as Jesus followers. That's how history ends. And we looked at how the story of the Bible is not a story about God trying to get us out of earth. It's a story about God trying to come to earth to dwell with us. So not to get us out of earth to come to heaven, but to bring heaven to earth to overlap with earth. And that's the message of Eden. That's the message of the tabernacle and the temple. The way John describes Jesus as a living, breathing tabernacle, an overlap between heaven and earth. And the way at Pentecost, the presence of God comes upon and into the the believers and the followers of Jesus. And then Paul describes us as the temple. And then finally, at the very end of Revelation, this little picture of the end of all history where God comes from heaven and heaven descends to earth. And there's a new heaven
Hmm.
and a new earth and a new Jerusalem and a new city that is a garden. And there's no temple because God and the Lamb are the temple and the whole earth is the temple and so on and so forth. So
Hmm.
that's what we got into with that second conversation.
Yeah, absolutely.
But we we kind of ended that second conversation with what about the rapture then?
What's the deal with all these people flying up into the sky?
Right, right. Because what doesn't fit into that big story that we traced from Genesis all the way to Revelation is the part where we get zapped up, like leaving disembodied clothing everywhere, and Nicolas Cage is flying an airplane, and half the people are gone, and like, oh my gosh, what just happened? And everything's crashing, and all the crazy stuff left behind. I'm referencing the Left Behind movie. If you got really confused just now, there's a Left Behind movie, and it's Nick Cage, I think, is the
Yeah,
the main character
it
pilot guy.
is.
Okay, just making sure I got my facts straight. But the part that's missing from that narrative is the part where we fly up to heaven, and then the earth is like forever messed up forevermore, and then we are in heaven forevermore. That isn't something that seems to fit with that story.
Yeah.
So I want to kind of tee us off here. Let's define our terms. When
Okay.
you hear the word rapture, Tony,
Hmm.
what is the, and I think we kind of had this, like a little bit of this conversation in the very first episode, but this
Yeah.
particular episode really revolves around that. What's the basic story that you've been taught with what the rapture is?
Yeah, I mean, no doubt about it. This comes from a place of good intentions and good spirits in an area where Christians, you know, they look forward to the return of Jesus and they look forward to rapture being returned with Jesus, right? And so it doesn't come from a bad place whatsoever. I want to make that first clear, but for me it really is the Sunday school idea that Jesus is going to come back and we are going to, if you're a good Christian, a good believer, you're somehow going to float off into the sky is always the imagery, regardless of seeing that movie or not. Like that was definitely something. And that's a question, an easy question, I'm sure actually, that I have is like, is that pure fiction? Where does that come from, that idea? And I'm sure we'll talk about that a little bit more. But the just the whole idea that if you're not a Christian, you're gonna be left behind because you never know when Jesus is gonna come. He'll be like a thief in the night,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, like I said, it's not it's not a place from manipulation that I feel like some people can accuse when it comes to end time conversations, or especially if we're talking about what you were talking about with the recent dates of, oh, God told me the rapture is going to be on this date. Like the people who believe that, I think it was more that they hoped for that,
Mm.
and I don't blame them. I don't blame a strong Christian who truly hopes to see that moment in their life.
Yeah.
That is not a terrible hope.
Well, it's like the rapture thing is wrapped up with a lot of other hopes that the Bible
Hmm.
talks about very explicitly.
Yeah.
You mentioned like Jesus coming like a thief in the night, like suddenly and
Hmm.
surprisingly, not like he's going to steal or has malicious intent or something, but it's going to be like shocking, like
Yeah.
surprising when he arrives. But when he arrives, he's going to put history straight.
Mm.
Like he's going to heal creation. So all the things that are messed up about this world we live in, God, Jesus is going to put them right. That's the biblical hope. That's what Jesus talks about. And so like is it wrong for the follower of Jesus to hold on to that hope
Yeah.
that that one day in history God is going to make all things right and all things new? It's
Yeah,
like
no,
no.
definitely not wrong at all.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
I think it's a totally valid hope. And so,
Hmm.
when Paul in Corinthians, like the love chapter, right?
Hmm.
In 1 Corinthians 13, he says faith, hope, and love, but the greatest of these is love. It's like the
Hmm.
classic line. And for the longest time, I always thought like, okay, faith, that's important. I get it. Love, I get why that's important. But what about hope? Like,
Interesting.
why is that in the list of like the big three for
Yeah,
Paul?
yeah.
And I don't think I really understood the value of it until life got really, really hard for me.
Yeah.
And then it's like, okay, when life is when life is giving you lemons, such that you don't want to wake up in the morning and deal with all these lemons.
Hmm.
And I'm I'm saying that with levity, but when you don't want to wake up in the morning again and have to do it again,
Yeah.
it's like, is there incredible value and even like not just importance, but like an essential element to being able to hold on to one day, like things are going to be better.
Yeah, it's absolutely critical, you know? And I was just thinking this, like, if you're listening to this podcast and maybe you don't identify yourself as a Christian or maybe religious or agnostic or whatever, like I think that's something that everyone can hope for and everyone can want one day is to not be in this broken world or as you said it, Nate, to have this broken world be healed in a place where there isn't this terrible things that we have to go through and having that hope like I think it's great that you know like you said Paul pointed it out as a huge one of the top three, but that hope is something that I feel like every human can have and every human does have because when hard times do come it's like man there's got to be something better than this. It's
Yeah.
got to be able to one day not be like this,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. I think it's like given the state of the world, I think it's like you said, it's essential. Like I think it really is. Like it's
Yeah.
critical. Um, so, it's like, do you say, oh, you guys caring about the rapture, you're all totally backwards. It's like,
Yeah.
no, the rapture is like one part of a theological package that people accept. But the really, I think, appealing part is the part where Jesus makes everything right again.
Yes. Yeah.
So that's
Absolutely.
valid. In terms of like Jesus worldview. And if you buy into Jesus worldview, you buy into the part where he says, by the way, like everything will be made new and every tear will be wiped from every eye, right?
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
that's awesome. That's super cool. But the question we want to ask is not is is there going to be a point in history like that? The question we want to ask is the idea of the whole like fire escape to
Mm.
like, okay, and now we're getting out of this place.
Yeah. We're
Given
leaving
everything we've
the
been, yeah,
non-believers behind.
yeah, that's right. Is the rapture itself part of that package that we should say, yes, this is Jesus' vision for how this is going to happen?
Mm.
And so for me, as a Jesus follower, and I've bought fully into Jesus' vision of life and humanity and the future and whatever else. Um, for me, it's a question of, is this Jesus' vision? Like,
Mm.
has he presented this? Have, Paul and Peter and whoever else, have they presented this?
Yeah.
And if so, then it's like, okay, well, for me, I'm going to believe it because
Yeah.
that worldview has proven itself to me in so many other ways. But if it's not something they presented, then I don't want to accept it because it seems like it's out of step with many, many other things that Jesus has said. He doesn't say repent because you can go to the kingdom of heaven. He says repent
Yeah.
because the kingdom of heaven has come near, right?
Hmm.
So,
Hmm.
so the fundamental question is it in the Bible?
Is it in the Bible? Super easy.
That's right. Is it in the Bible? I think at least at some point over the last couple episodes, we've mentioned the really big spots, or really, like not the big spots, the spots that people point to for evidence of the rapture. So I thought it would be fun if we just went through each one and we talked about it
Sounds
real quick.
good.
We talked
Yeah,
about it real quick.
absolutely.
Okay. Well, here we go. Um, John chapter 14. is the first one. And in John 14, Jesus says, "In my Father's house are many rooms.
Mm.
I go to prepare a place for you." So how have you typically thought about that verse or heard that verse explained?
So I am probably a bad person to ask this question to because I feel like I could be wrong, but I feel like I actually do understand the historical
Hmm.
context to this one, and it's
Look at
hard for me
you.
to remember a time where I don't like what did I think before I first heard it?
Uh-huh.
And I think the
Yeah.
reality is I didn't think about that verse a lot.
Okay.
That's not one that stood out to me. But
Well,
if
I'll
Kanan was here, he'd have a different
yeah, yeah. Oh,
answer.
come on, Kanan. Yeah, yep. I'll do my best to represent how I've heard it taught
Gotcha.
and why it's on the list of
Hmm.
like not just the big three, but the three.
Yeah.
The idea of the rapture, you can't find that anywhere in Revelation. By the way, it's nowhere in Revelation. People would think normally, oh, that's the place we get it. It
Yeah.
isn't in Revelation in any sense. So the three spots are here in John 14, and then two others we'll talk about in a minute. For most people, they think in, and I think this came up in the last episode as well, in audio adrenaline terms.
Yeah.
So audio adrenaline had that huge like
Yeah,
Christian
yeah,
track called Big House,
yeah. Yep.
and it said there's a big house with lots and lots of food, a big table. Hold on, excuse me, I'm fumbling the
There's
audio
lots and
adrenaline
lots of
reference.
room,
Yes, big
lots and lots of
house, lots
food
and
on the
lots of rooms,
table.
big table with lots and lots of food, a big yard where we can play football.
Oh wow.
A big house. It's my Father's house, and so it's based off of this thing right here. And the idea is, um, I don't know what's going to happen. Like in the verses, like I don't know exactly what it's going to look like when we die and go to heaven, or get raptured and go to heaven. With tomato,
Mhm.
however we get there. But I do know there's a big house.
Yeah.
There's many rooms, big table, a lot of feasting, and Jesus has prepared a place for us up in heaven in God's big house.
Hmm.
So you said you have a different perspective of it.
I do. I
I'm
do.
curious. I'm
Yeah.
curious what that is.
Now, without a doubt, I would prelude this by the details of this category is definitely something that we'll probably have another episode on in the future because I think there's so much fascinating context here. And basically, my understanding is it goes back to Jewish culture, and specifically Jewish culture, where covenants were made between men and women, marriage, and the idea is that, and there's like I said, there's so much here. I do find so much of it very fascinating, especially when Jesus is talking about the covenant. But that's a whole nother tangent. But the idea is when you say my father's house, right? And we're
Hmm.
thinking, oh yeah, God and heaven, he's preparing a place at the father's side.
Yep.
For Jewish people, it was literal. Like, hey, I want to marry you. Like I'm making, some level of my intentions clear, and there's details to that. But I first am going to go to my father's actual house, where my father dwells, and I'm going to prepare a place for you and I to be a part of my father's house, like and be a part of our family because you are coming into our family. We are making that covenant. And so it's the idea that it's a bride and a groom, and the groom preparing a place for his future wife at his actual father and actual family's dwelling place.
Nice. Okay. Good. I love the first century Jewish um,
Hmm.
context there, because I think you have a crucial part of that, which is the
Yeah.
idea of like being welcomed into God's family.
Yeah.
But I do think some people could even take that context and still say, well, where is God's house?
Uh-huh. Good point.
It's in heaven.
Yeah. Good point.
So,
Yeah.
even
Yeah.
with that context, someone could still say, I think we're going to heaven. So I'm going to
Hmm.
add one more layer to that, if you don't
Nice.
mind,
Go
because
for it.
along with the first century context of a literal house and invitation into family, a first century Jew, which is who Jesus is speaking to here,
Hmm.
a group of first century Jewish people,
Yeah.
When they hear God's house, they think of a literal, specific, physical location. Any guesses?
No, I don't know from what they would assume as a
I bet
first
I
century
bet you
Jew.
could figure it out. I bet you could figure it out, but I'm not going to put you on the spot. I'll tell you.
Uh,
It was a not just like an obscure, but a standard phrase for the temple.
oh yeah,
Yeah, for
the
the temple.
tabernacle. Wow.
Not well, not but at this point in history, they didn't have a tabernacle
Okay,
because
that's true.
Solomon had built the temple in Jerusalem, and so the temple had taken the place of the tabernacle. But it's still there, right? It's up on the mountain
Hmm.
of Jerusalem, Mount Zion, and like there's the temple. So for the Jews, the house of God is that building, like right over there.
And so, if I were to put myself in their shoes, are they hearing that Jesus is basically claiming, we're going to build a room for you in that temple, and you are going to live in the temple with all the others, and there will be a place for you there?
Yeah. Now they might be a little confused because they're
Yeah.
like,
So it's like,
and
what?
over there, and
Yeah.
they're like, I know it has a lot of rooms, but there's not quite enough,
Yeah,
not quite enough of
exactly.
them.
That
But
doesn't make
but
sense, Jesus.
recall for a minute, this is in the book of John,
Mhm.
and this is the hard part where for those of you who have not listened to the last episode, I will appeal. This would be a great time to go back and listen to it because I'm going to reference some things we said there that might not hit, and if or might not hit if you haven't listened to that last episode. If you hear the next things I say and you're like, I don't believe you, you haven't given enough evidence for this.
Yeah.
Go
Yeah.
listen to the last episode if you don't mind before you call me a heretic. You can still call me a heretic afterward, but at
Oh
least give
yeah.
me like do me the favor of that first. But
We're used to it.
in that last episode, we traced the theme of temple and the theme of the overlap between heaven and earth, starting with Eden, like I mentioned a
Yeah,
little
the
before,
Garden of Eden.
the tabernacle being a portable Eden space in the midst of his people, decorated
Hmm.
in the garden or in terms or in the same manner as the Garden of Eden with fruit trees and golden cherubim guarding the entrances and so on and so forth. And
Yeah.
then we have the temple, which is the same. And then later, John himself in his gospel describes Jesus in John chapter 1 as the place where God set up his tabernacle among us, or
Hmm.
his dwelling, but the Greek word means to set up his tabernacle. So this has already been established in the book of John. So Jesus says, I'm my Father's house, i.e., the temple. I'm going to prepare a place for you in the temple. And what was the temple? Well, it's the place where heaven and earth meet.
Mhm.
So is Jesus talking about real estate, like real estate in heaven somewhere? Or rather, is he using temple language to make a point?
Yeah.
Do you see
Yeah,
where I'm
we
going with
definitely
this?
think the temple language, absolutely. Because the kingdom of God was definitely not what the first century Jews were expecting. They were expecting a literal physical kingdom.
Yeah. I mean, and also, like, recall, it was the next chapter over, not from 14 to 15, but from 1 to 2, where Jesus said, like, if you destroy this temple, I'll raise it again in 3 days.
Yep,
John
that's
2.
exactly right.
And then
Yeah.
John's like, Psst, reader, by the way, he wasn't talking about the building. He was
Yeah.
talking about his body. Like he was
Yeah.
talking about himself. So this is really interesting here because Jesus is saying, like, I'm going to prepare a place for you in my Father's house. There's many rooms there. I'm getting it ready for you. Now, so he's like, in the one hand, he's talking about himself, but himself is the temple, but it's the overlap between heaven and earth that really seems to be the point.
Yeah.
So, in what sense is he preparing a place for them in the overlap between heaven and earth?
Good question.
I
Yeah.
know, right? Well, from John 14, there's some particular things that are about to happen in the story. Any guesses?
Oh, I could not.
He's about to be killed.
Oh, okay. Okay.
He's about
So
to be
it's right
killed.
around the corner.
Yeah. He's about to die and then not just die, but be resurrected again
Mhm.
into new life.
Mm.
And then
Mhm.
that new life, we go all the way to Revelation, where there is no temple, because God and the Lamb are the temple. God and the Son are the temple, but the whole earth is the temple. The whole earth is the dwelling place of God.
Yeah, the
Or
garden.
Revelation 21, the dwelling place of God, which is like that shorthand for the temple, is with humans. Heaven comes
Mm.
down, earth is renewed. John 14 is like a perfect alignment with this, but as Jesus speaks to people who he's trying to inch them along to understand where history's heading.
Yeah.
He says the Father's house is not just that building, it's me, but it's expanding to include you and me.
Mm.
It's expanding to include the us. And in that sense, we become the many rooms. In Peter says we become the living stones in God's new temple. That's First Peter chapter 2.
Oh, wow.
So what Jesus is saying here, like there's no sense in which he's saying like there's a massive condo up in the clouds and I'm getting like I'm gonna go up there. I'm like it's a little dusty. I'm gonna get it ready for you, and it'll be ready whenever you guys get there. Whenever we zap you up,
Yeah.
he's promising union with God in the renewed creation.
Yeah.
So that there isn't beam me up imagery here. The whole Gospel of John, like the entire thing from the first chapter all the way to the end, is about God coming down to dwell with us.
Yeah. Yeah, that
So
makes sense.
so here, I think that you can't use John 14 as a proof text for the rapture, because the beam me up thing isn't here, but the new creation thing is here. In fact, it seems to say the opposite, that the
Mm.
Eden ideal is fulfilled in Jesus, the temple, but then shared to include us in the new heavens and the new earth.
Yeah, because one day we are going to be the Garden of Eden, the Garden City as well,
Yeah,
not just Jesus.
yeah, yeah, that's right. So there we go. That's John 14.
All right.
What do
All
you think?
right. Yeah, no, I mean that totally makes sense. And I think that's a very good point that it's real easy to make assumptions when you first hear something, especially when you already have that preconceived idea in your head, you know? I
Yeah,
mean, how many times does that happen with anything, not just Christianity or looking at the Bible, but if you have this idea that you might not be intentionally thinking about, it's going to be really easy to see this verse and transpose it, you know, and make this verse fit what you're already believing.
yeah. Okay, cool, great. You wanna move on to
Yeah.
the next
So
one?
which one's next? Yeah.
The next one is probably the most famous one. It's Matthew 24, and this is the two men will be in the field, one will be taken, and one left.
Mm.
So
Hmm.
sounds like a rapture, right?
It does. It also sounds like a parable. And if I know anything about Jesus and his parables, he's trying to communicate something through
Well, I mean,
them.
okay, I'll give you the little context of this whole chapter. Um,
Absolutely.
in this chapter, Jesus has he's just been talking about how Jerusalem is going to be destroyed.
Okay.
So they're in Jerusalem. This is right before Jesus is arrested and then crucified. And they're walking around in Jerusalem, and the disciples are like, "Wow, look how beautiful the stones of the temple are." And Jesus goes, "I'm telling you, before this generation is over, not one stone will be left."
Wow.
And it's like, "Holy crap, what?" So what? Just first blush, what do you think that means?
Yeah, I mean, talking about the actual temple being destroyed, sure, but I also feel like in the context of where we're going, like, hey guys, the physical isn't what I care about. The
Mm,
physical isn't what I'm trying to get you to open your eyes to,
yeah,
but beyond an actual physical external thing,
yeah.
but something internal.
Yeah, I think both are true. I think in this case, the realist meaning for Jesus is the physical one,
Yeah.
because this would have been right around 30 AD, and any history buffs out there might realize that about 40 years later, that temple would be physically torn to the ground.
Is that is that the time of Nero, or am I confusing that?
Yeah, this is when I believe Nero died right before that. But this is
Okay.
when the state of Judah, or like the province
Mhm.
of Judah, formally rebelled against the
That,
Roman Empire,
yes,
and
yes.
they killed like all the Romans that they could get their hands on. And then Rome went, "No, okay," and they
All right, we're gonna put you guys down.
yeah they sent the cavalry in, and it was like the abomination of desolation part two.
Yeah.
It was like under Antiochus Epiphanes in the intertestamental period with like the Seleucid Greeks. It was like that again, like
Mm,
genocide.
mm,
And the temple was like the second temple torn to the ground.
yep.
So why is Jesus saying this? Well, he has just come off of quite a lot of interaction with the leaders of Jerusalem, where Jesus has been appealing to them to choose a way of peace.
Mm,
You know, like in Luke, it says, if only you had recognized the way to peace. But rather, the leaders of Jerusalem, instead of embracing Jesus' way of a kingdom that starts internally, rather than killing the enemy, killing the infidel, and
yeah.
establishing their own physical kingdom, the leaders of Jerusalem are embracing the concept of a Messiah, of like a David, like a
Yeah.
violent David,
Yeah.
rather than a peace
A
bringing David.
conquering king.
That's right.
Yeah.
So Jesus like laments. He weeps into Jerusalem, and he's like, "I wanted to gather you in, and you were unwilling. And if only you would recognize the way towards peace." Jesus sees where things are heading, and the people, but the leaders, increasingly embracing the path of the zealot, basically.
Yes. Yeah.
And so he says, "I'm telling you, like I see, like the die has been cast. I see what they've chosen after having all these interactions with them." And he says, "Before this generation is over, not a single stone of this temple will be left."
Mm.
So the disciples hear that and they're like, "Holy crap." They're thinking two things. First of all, when is that going to happen?
Yeah.
And then, second of all, and addition to that, Jesus, what will be the sign of your coming when
Huh.
this age of history ends? Do you
Uh-huh.
see the assumption they've made?
Yeah. Yeah.
They're assuming, well, when the temple's destroyed, that will be like the end of the age in history.
Yeah. And that will
Like
mark the return of
that'll
Jesus
mark
that
when
was
Jesus
promised.
returns. Now it's
Yeah.
it's two questions they ask. When is that going to happen? And then what will be the sign of your coming at the end of the age? For them, those questions are totally unrelated, but they're two different questions.
Uh-huh.
So Jesus is going to start answering what I think is the first question. When is that going to happen? And he says, "Look, when that happens, there's going to be wars, there's going to be famines, and there's going to be earthquakes, and there'll be false leaders and false messiahs." And he says, "When you see Jerusalem attacked by the Roman Empire," or he says, "When you see the abomination of desolation standing in the holy place in the temple, you'll know that that's what's happening right here."
Hmm.
That language of abomination of desolation is from Daniel, but also from Isaiah. In Isaiah, it's about an Assyrian king that comes to Jerusalem, and then the Babylonian king and his armies come to destroy and defile Jerusalem and the temple. But so
Hmm.
Jesus picks up that same thing. It's the theme of Gentile soldiers marching into the temple to destroy it.
Yeah.
You might think, wait a minute, how do you see the abomination of desolation and know that he's talking about Rome? Because Luke has the same exact speech in his gospel, but at that point, he doesn't say abomination of desolation. He says, when you see Jerusalem surrounded by armies, you're going to know that its desolation is near.
Gotcha. Yeah. So it's synonymous at that point.
Yeah. But then, this is really interesting. Then Jesus goes on, because he's still talking about the literal destruction of Jerusalem.
Hmm.
And then he says this: "But immediately after the tribulation of those days, the sun will be darkened, and the moon will not give its light, and the stars will fall from the sky, and the powers of the heavens will be shaken."
Huh.
He's like, okay, that sounds like end times to me. Like we're leading up to the point where he's about to say one will be taken and one will be left, right? And those words, the sun will be darkened, moon not giving its light, stars falling from the sky, the powers of the heavens will be shaken. That sure sounds like the end of everything.
Yeah, it also sounds suspiciously like he might be talking about himself again.
May, may, Yeah, maybe. Yeah. When you read something like that seems weirdly out of place in the New
Uh-huh.
Testament, first question to ask is it a quote from the Old Testament?
Yes. Good
And
question. Good point.
the answer is yes. This is
Okay.
Jesus quoting word for word from Isaiah 13. And in Isaiah 13, it says, "In that day, the sun will be darkened, the moon will not give its light, the stars will fall from the sky, the powers of the heavens will be shaken." Um, what is Isaiah describing? What is that day? He's describing the day when the empire of Babylon will fall.
Mhm. Okay.
Okay, are you following?
Yeah.
So
One of the
Isaiah,
conquering people. Yeah.
yeah, Babylon is this is the kingdom that conquered Judah and tore down the temple and dragged them off into exile.
Yep.
And so the people are like, when is God going to address this? And Isaiah says, it's going to happen. And in that day, it's going to be like catastrophic. Like it's going to be, pun intended, biblical. The sun will be darkened, the moon will not give its light. This is Isaiah's description in chapter 13 of the fall of Babylon.
Hmm.
So, what do you see what Jesus just did?
So he was referencing old scripture in order to answer their question.
Yeah, but he's just quoted from a description of the fall of Babylon
Uh-huh.
to describe the day when Jerusalem will fall to the Roman Empire.
Yeah. Yeah, because they are this age's Babylon.
No, wait a minute, wait a minute. Which one is this age's Babylon?
Mhm.
The Roman Empire?
Yes, yes, the Roman Empire.
Wait a minute, that's not what he said.
Oh, okay.
Isaiah 13 is describing the end of the Roman Empire.
Oh, okay.
Excuse me, I'm sorry. The end of the
The Babylon.
Babylonian Empire.
Uh-huh.
What is Jesus describing here in Matthew 24?
The end of the temple that
The
you'll,
the end of Jerusalem.
yeah, Jerusalem. Uh-huh.
So Jesus has just compared the fall of Babylon to the fall of Jerusalem.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah, I did not catch that.
You get
Huh.
that? So,
Wow.
like the implicit statement, like because every one of his, like the disciples, they hear him quoting, they hear him giving this description.
Uh-huh.
They're like, the fall of Jerusalem. Oh no, no, it's got to be the end of everything. And Jesus goes, actually, it's going to be like the end of Babylon.
Oh my gosh,
He's
that's
just
gotta be.
he's just compared Jerusalem to Babylon. Like they've become
It's like,
like
wait, wait,
Babylon.
what?
I know, yeah. By the way, this is not the first time in the Bible that Jerusalem has become like Babylon.
Mhm.
Jerusalem, in its own mind and in the minds of the leaders, they're so superior to these other nations, but they're compared by the prophets to be like a city of blood instead of a city of peace. Jerusalem. They're compared to be like another version of Babylon because in so many times in Jewish history, their leaders rejected God's path for them and rejected being a priest to all nations and
Mhm.
rather embraced glorifying strength, money, violence, all the same things that Babylon glorified. So for Jesus, this is like, just like we talked about in the first episode with Daniel and Revelation, tracing these themes that manifest themselves again and again. Jesus is seeing like the fall of Babylon is one manifestation of God allowing a kingdom to fold in on itself and experience the consequences of its actions.
Yeah.
And then he says, and Jerusalem is going to be like the same thing.
Jeez.
By the end of this
Yeah.
generation, God's going to allow it to experience the consequences of its own actions.
Yeah.
So far, he's talking about the fall of Jerusalem, like a singular event, within the framework of this Babylon prophetic language.
Okay. Yeah.
And then he says in verse 34, truly, this generation will not pass away until all those things take place. That's what he says.
Uh-huh.
Now, if you are thinking that this is the end of all history that he's been describing, you
Then
can't
you
take that
think that's
phrase.
happening soon.
Yeah, you can't take that phrase literally. You have to say this generation won't pass away. You have to find some other way of interpreting that.
Yeah.
But what he says is, before this generation passes away, what I just described is going to happen.
Mm.
And we know 40 years later, it literally happened.
Yeah. Yeah, and it was not the end of all things, it was the end of Jerusalem.
Yeah. But remember, for the disciples, their question, they gave a two-part question. When is that going to happen? In asking about the fall of Jerusalem that Jesus just predicted. And what will be the sign of your coming and the end of all things, like the end of the age?
Yeah.
Like they bundled it together. So Jesus has just answered the first part.
Okay.
Now he's got to answer the second part now. So in verse 36, he starts moving on to talking about the ultimate day. Like the day of the Lord is how the Bible puts that. When violent human kingdoms meet their full and final end. That's that picture in Daniel and in Revelation. In verse 36, he moves past talking about the singular event of Jerusalem being one manifestation of that cycle and starts talking about to the final manifestation of that cycle, the second part of their question. So he says, but of that day and hour, and I have to put emphasis on the word that, because I think he changes from the singular event of Jerusalem to the final manifestation of this cycle. He says, of that day and hour, nobody knows.
Oh, wow. So it gave all this detail to answer the first part,
Yeah.
because like making it very clear that hey, you think that Israel is all that in a bag of chips, but you guys are as a whole is just as bad as Babylon,
Yeah.
and made that comparison.
Yeah.
And then he's like, but don't get that confused with the actual me returning.
Mm-hmm.
No one's gonna know when
He says,
I
of that day and
come
hour,
back.
nobody knows. And then he says this, it'll be like the days of Noah.
Uh-huh.
So follow this really, really carefully. He
Okay.
says, it'll be like the days of Noah. People will be eating and drinking and being merry. Two men will be in a field. One will be taken and one left.
Huh. Okay, so we're making a full circle now, guys. If if
Or,
if you're listening
uh-huh.
here,
Yeah.
this is we are here, and I'm trying to think about it real careful.
Uh-huh.
Like in the days of Noah,
In the days of Noah,
so
people
it won't
eating,
be
drinking, being
expected.
merry. Yeah. But so so there were some people who were taken and some were left in the days of Noah.
Yeah, only the people who made it on the boat with Noah,
Yeah.
right?
So who was by the language is like it's taken or swept away or
Yeah.
swept up. Now we hear language like swept up and we think rapture, swept up into heaven.
But swept up by an ocean that just flooded everything.
If you're swept up in a flood,
A
like the days
flood.
of Noah,
Yeah.
you're the ones experiencing the consequences of the devolution of creation.
Oh. Huh.
Uh-huh. Isn't that nuts?
So a
He compares
lot
it to
of
the flood. Yeah.
yeah, a lot of people when they hear the word swept up, like you're automatically thinking, oh man, you're a good Christian, you're gonna be swept up
Into
into
heaven.
heaven, into someplace else. That those who aren't good Christians, they get left behind.
Yep.
But what we're actually understanding with the biblical context, historical context here, is it's Jesus compared it to the flood of Noah,
Yeah.
and the wicked ones were the ones who got swept up
Yeah.
and washed away
Yeah.
by the flood
Now
that
here's the
he's
thing.
going.
Like if Jesus wanted to make a statement about being swept up to God's presence, he could have
Uh-huh.
made that very easily by not saying in the days of Noah. He
Yeah.
could have said it will be like in the days of, and like we can just like do like a little like index thing. Do I have any category for people in the Old Testament who were taken up to be with God?
Elijah, right?
Elijah.
Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah. So it could be like in that day, it'll be like the days of Elijah,
Yeah.
where some will be swept up into God's presence and
And then
some
the
left
others will be
behind.
left behind.
He could have
Yeah.
said that,
But he
right?
didn't.
He could have said it'll be like the days of Enoch, because Enoch was like taken up to be with God's presence,
Uh-huh.
right?
Yeah,
But he
yeah.
says it'll be like the days of Noah. And
Oh,
who's
that's
swept up in the days of
fascinating.
Noah? It's the people who are released to the chaos waters.
Yeah. Yeah, that's absolutely fascinating. That's a completely different perspective
Yeah,
that I did not know.
I
Wow.
know. Well, I first saw this just a couple of years ago, and I was like, wait a minute, why have I been ignoring the days of Noah part? Like, why have
Yeah.
I skimmed over the days of Noah part when that's the explicit example for how one will be taken up, one will be swept up?
Yeah.
So, like the
Wow.
flood itself is even another picture of God releasing violent human kingdoms to experience their own consequences. Because we think of the flood like, and God just decided just to pour flood water on everything, right? Just like, I'm sick of
Probably
this.
have a whole nother episode on
I'm
that
sick
one,
of this.
huh?
I'm going to dump flood water on everything.
Yeah.
The really quick picture of this is it's the exact opposite of what happens in Genesis chapter 1.
Mhm.
So Genesis 1 starts with chaos waters, which in the ancient Near East, they associate water with the opposite of creation. Like
Mhm.
all those cultures associated water with like absolute chaos.
Yeah.
In Genesis 1, God speaks and he brings order within all of the chaos, right? The waters separate and they provide space for life. In Genesis 6, where humanity has embraced wickedness, like complete rebellion and wickedness, God says, if this is what you choose, is chaos, then I will let you have chaos. Like I will let you have what you want. And Genesis 6 is God removing his hand of order. And it says, not only does water come from the sky, in Genesis 6, it says waters also came from below. The waters
Yeah.
above and the waters below, essentially creation returns to chaos there.
Mm.
So many were swept away in the consequences of their own choices.
Mm.
And in many senses, the natural consequences of their own choices. So there you go. There's way more stuff we could get into there. That's
Yeah,
way
absolutely.
faster than it needs to be. But that's Matthew 24. And for me, this can't be used as a proof text for the rapture
Yeah, no, absolutely not.
because it's
Like
not what Jesus says.
it's specifically calling out the opposite, actually.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Okay. And since we're
We
running
have
low on time, let's jump over to the last one real quick.
yes. Okay. So
Last
there's
one
only one left.
is 1 Thessalonians 4. We had to get some Paul in here.
Mm.
1 Thessalonians 4, this is, grand finale. It says, believers will be caught up together in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air.
If that's not the rapture, Nate, I don't know what
This
is.
is the smoking gun. How can this be?
They
How can
got
this be about
you.
anything else? This one might be my favorite because it doesn't require a 30-minute like verse by verse. You
Uh-huh.
literally just go, oh, okay, that word means that. Oh, okay. Oh, well, all right, I get it. It's just like very simple Greek and cultural context. The Greek word that Paul uses for the word meet, because again, believers will be like in that day when Jesus returns, we will be caught up together in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air.
Mm.
That Greek word that Paul uses for the word meet is apenthesis. Apenthesis. So that word was a technical term. Essentially, when you have, let's say, the emperor of Rome, or you have a king of a region, or whatever else, the citizens, they wouldn't, if they were being visited by the emperor or by the king, it wouldn't be appropriate or proper to just sit and wait in the city for the king to come.
Uh-huh.
You would send out a big group, maybe the entire city would come out, and they would meet or apenthesis that king or that emperor. And then they would escort him back into the city
Huh.
as like a
Okay.
parade. In other
Yeah,
words,
like a giant
it's a
parade.
term that means like formal welcoming party.
Okay.
So let's trace this out. We have Emperor Nero, and he's showing up. Our city is going to all gather together, meet him part way, welcome him, and then escort him back into the city.
Okay.
So Paul
So
just said, when Jesus returns, we believers of Jesus will be caught up together
uh-huh.
in the skies
Uh-huh.
to apenthesis the Lord.
So to meet him part way, so we would be leaving the city essentially to go to where he is,
Yeah.
but with the purpose of bringing him back
Yeah.
into the city.
Yeah. The word it explicitly has the meaning of coming back in.
Yeah.
So we were just in Matthew 24 and Matthew 25. Remember like the parable of the 10 virgins
Okay.
and like the bridegroom?
Yes.
And there's this moment where it's like, behold, the bridegroom's here. Let's come out to meet him. And the virgins go out. That's the same word.
Same Greek
Let's
word.
come out. Eis apentisen is the conjugation. Apentisen.
Uh-huh.
What they do is they go out, meet him, and then escort him back into the wedding feast. So it's meeting and then escorting back in. So if we're meeting Jesus in the clouds, like that's great. Where Paul's language is about welcoming a king. It's
Yeah.
about welcoming like the guest of honor or an
Yeah.
emperor or the whatever, but it always includes coming back. So are we
Yeah.
going to be caught up in the clouds and then just stay there? Well, if that was the case, he wouldn't have used this word.
Mm.
We're meeting him and then escorting. It's a picture of us, like the citizens of God's kingdom, rising to greet our returning King Jesus and welcoming him as he comes to establish his reign on the renewed earth.
Yeah, because once more, we're not the original author is when he's speaking to these people, when he's writing to these people, he's not talking about something physical. He's not talking about something external. He's trying to paint the picture that, hey, this is our king. This is our emperor of an internal kingdom that will last forever, and we will welcome him. He is not of us. Like he is not like one of like in on this broken world, so sure we have to go up to him, but it's with the purpose of bringing him to be among us,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Which, I mean,
That's
if
nuts.
you're keeping score, that resonates perfectly with everything
Yep.
else we've been talking about over the last handful of
Yep.
episodes.
That's what Jesus was talking about, and that's what we saw in Revelation, in Daniel, and the understanding of like it's the end times is way more about the internal, the actual Garden of Eden coming back to Earth amongst us, but in us. And
Yeah.
I think that's great. That's
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yep. So we're like, oh, we're already winding down here, so we need to head to the end. I mean,
Mhm.
I consider that a success in doing a crash course in. This is not like I'm not cherry picking the weakest like Rapture verses. These are the
These
three
are the
Rapture
ones.
verses.
Yeah.
These are these are the ones.
Yeah.
And so we looked at three. We looked at John 14. We looked at Matthew 24 and First Thessalonians chapter 4. I don't think any of them can be used in support of this idea of a secret escape from planet Earth. All of
Yeah.
them. Like John 14 is about God's presence.
Mm.
Matthew 24 is about God's judgment on corrupt systems. And then First Thessalonians 4 is about welcoming our King.
Yeah.
So hearing all that together for you and like wrapping this up and like taking the easy approach to all this, how does that shift your big picture view of what we're all waiting for?
Yeah, it's not a location problem. It's not a we are leaving behind the broken and the desolate in this painful world that we know. It's this world is going to be transformed. That this world will be the Garden of Eden again, and we're not leaving it.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I think we talked about that hope. Our hope isn't escape; it's
Yeah,
resurrection.
yeah, that's
The
right. Because
central, yeah. Go ahead.
I was just saying, like, yeah, because that is what so many Christians are hoping for, is to leave all the brokenness behind you, and we'll be in a new place with, no more pain and no more tears. And so everything that we have here, you don't have to worry about any of that because we're gonna leave it all behind.
Yeah.
But it's like, no, like that the hope is here and it's going to be redeemed and restored,
Hmm.
not left behind.
Yeah. Yeah. The central promise of the New Testament isn't that we're leaving.
Yeah.
It's we get to be raised. Like
Mm.
we didn't talk about this because we just don't have much time. But even First Thessalonians chapter 4, it isn't even like even the focus isn't about being the caught up thing. It's Paul's
Mhm.
answer to a church that was grieving because loved ones had died and they felt like they missed the coming of Jesus, so they missed the whole thing. And Paul's saying, no, your loved ones will be resurrected
Mhm.
as a part of this recreation of everything when the King returns. So
Mm.
our hope is very solid and it's very physical, not just floaty and spiritual.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I kind of feel like, it goes back to a little bit what I was saying in the beginning, that a lot of the intentions of very good Christians, like they want to see Jesus. They want to be there for that final day. And we totally understand it, and we're on that same page. And even if you're not a Christian, I know that there's still that hope that this world is broken, and hopefully there can be a way for it to no longer be as terrible as it is. And so I just think that having a clear understanding of what the rapture is and is not, can help us understand a little more what was originally communicated, and should be more encouraging and provide us with even more hope than what we would have had if we were to leave all this behind, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And, I think unfortunately, rapture theology can create a lot of anxiety. Like, am
Yeah,
I ready? Or will I be left behind?
yeah,
But the original point of like so many of these passages was comfort. And
mhm,
the comfort is not in, at least according to what we just looked at, it's not in the secret escape plan. It's a knowing
yeah,
that Jesus is king, and it's a knowing that death is not the end, and it's a knowing that he's coming back to make all things new, and then we get to be a part of it.
yeah,
So
yeah. That is very comforting.
that's very comforting. That's hope.
Yeah,
Well, that was a fun time. I feel like that
absolutely.
was a like a fire hose.
Yeah, hopefully we didn't drown anyone out there.
Yep, yep. Feel free to cut this episode into 3 parts if you need some time to process stuff. If anybody is interested in like going deeper with this kind of thing, all of our episodes touch on this sort of stuff in one way or another.
Mhm.
But if you're looking for someone who's a lot smarter than me, then I'd encourage you to go check out N.T. Wright.
Yeah.
He has some really incredible books on the coming of the kingdom. Simply Jesus is a great place to start, but also The Day the Revolution Began is another one that gets a lot into these ideas.
Mm.
Or you can go check out the Bible Project podcast. I've been inspired and challenged by them in so many ways, and
Yeah.
they are a lot smarter than me. I don't know about
Yes.
Tony, but they're a lot smarter than me, at
Yeah,
least.
they're close.
All right, well, y'all. As always, thanks for tuning in. And,
Yes.
next time, I don't know what we're going to talk about just yet, but I can promise we're going to take the easy approach.
That's right. Take it
So,
easy, y'all.
yeah, take it easy.